How close were the Rams to trading up to get tight end Brock Bowers? And the Rams signed 16 undrafted free agents. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramley, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. A reminder, we are also over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor and join the party and subscribe to the Locked On Rams YouTube channel. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button, and let us know. Would you have liked to see the Rams draft Brock Bowers? Would you have liked that? Should they have traded up? Should they be more aggressive? Let us know down below. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've been covering LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 Sports, SI, Dodgers Nation. And of course, I'm always joined by the Rams pre, half, and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He's entering his 9th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. And on today's show, the Rams signed 16 undrafted free agents, and they were close to trading up for Brock Bowers. We're going to talk about that. And also, old friend OBJ signs with the Dolphins. How does that impact the Rams? All that more coming up. But first, this episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. Love me some Monopoly Go. Now, Travis, here in our first segment, we're going to talk about some post-draft rumors. And it was reported during the draft that the Rams were interested in trading up for Brock Bowers. It's well known at this point. Peter Schrager was the first to report that they were calling teams hoping to trade up to get Bowers. And then this weekend, NewOrleansFootball.com's Nick Underhill, he confirmed that the Rams are trying to trade with the Saints, and they were talking to the Saints about making a deal with them. But, of course, he ends up going to the Oakland Raiders. The Rams end up staying at 19 and drafting Jared first. So it's going to be one of those things, Travis, where we're going to look back a couple years from now and say, man, if Brock Bowers becomes this stud that he has the potential to be, or Jared Verse ends up being great, just kind of one of those things we'll keep our eye on for the next couple of years.
Yeah, that was always the player that seemed to make the most sense for what the Rams were trying to get done. I think that, obviously they needed to upgrade the defense, and they did with their first couple of picks. But it feels like, at least with the rumors going into it, that they were looking to move up. It didn't feel like they were looking to move up to do defense. It felt like they were looking to move up to get to an offensive player, that maybe Joe Alt, but the Chargers at 5 they were probably never going to be able to get that high up into it. Seeing where Bowers went, where he did to the Raiders, it did feel like maybe the Rams could get in there. But I'll use a line that I heard Rob Pelinka use, and it's one of the few things I've heard Rob Pelinka say that I thought was actually kind of interesting, which is you can't buy a house that's not for sale, right? And if there wasn't a deal to be made, there wasn't a deal to be made. And I know that the Rams have not a reputation of F them picks and all that stuff, and it served them very well, but I don't think that Les Snead is reckless. I don't think that he's aggressive, but I don't think that he's reckless to the point of, I'll give you whatever you want, just give me the thing. I think they tried to get him. I think it would have been fascinating to see a player like that at that position, with that athleticism, with the playmaking that he's able to bring to your team. It's the one piece that the Rams haven't really had at a very high level in the Sean McVay era, as a tight end that can make some plays. So it made a whole lot of sense. But if the guy was unavailable, he was unavailable, and the Rams weren't going to, break the proverbial bank to get it done.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is a good quote from Rob Pelinka. I mean, he did everything right in the offseason. I mean, based on the salary requirements they had, but where he did with, he didn't take Jaime Jaquez Jr. out of UCLA. Okay, he's right in your backyard. You don't take Jaime Jaquez Jr. from the University of California, Los Angeles. You end up drafting a guy who can't dribble, can't shoot, can't do anything. It's going to be a bust.
Development. Jalen Hood-Schifino was a developmental pick, D-Mac, and I'm sure there's going to have a lot of time to develop because they are in no man's land. Like I said, I don't want to hitch my wagon to the Rob Pelinka picks, but I do like the phrase of, you can't buy a house that's not for sale. And I think the Rams made an offer and they said, no thanks, not interested.
Can't buy a house, but you can also give people stuff. They gave Darvingham 2 years of free courtside seats for the Lakers. So you got to love that. But getting back on topic here, when it comes to Bowers, look, really good prospect. Would have been a really good fit. Would have been a very intriguing addition to this Rams offense. And we'll never know because he's on the Raiders. But I will say sometimes the best trades are the ones you don't make. The best signings are the ones you don't make. And when you look at where this roster was at post Aaron Donald retiring, I think it was the best thing for this Rams team. You had to shore up this defense at some point, and I think it could be one of those blessing in disguise type moves. Yeah. You had to really get your priorities in line, and you go with Jared Verse, someone who is right up there, top 2, top 3 when it comes to the odds of winning Defensive Rookie of the Year. He's versatile. He's got that versatility, no pun intended right there. I'll show myself out. And look, can play 3 tech, can play on the inside, the outside. I think where this defense was, I'm happy that the things shook out the way they did.
Look, I like how you said it, that sometimes you fall into something because you didn't have any other options, and it's exactly the right thing. Going into the draft, I think you and I both thought that the least likely outcome of the Rams' first-round pick was that they stay at 19 and pick there. That's exactly what happened. I think that we both thought that moving up was the most likely. Maybe moving back was the second option, but sitting where they are and picking at 19 seemed like the least likely option. That doesn't mean it isn't the best option. That Brock Bowers may have brought an element to that offense that we haven't seen, but the Rams move the ball on offense. The Rams have 2 very good wide receivers. They have a very good running back. They may have gotten a second very good running back in Blake Corum. We'll see what Davis Allen looks like developing into that tight end as Higbee gets a little bit better. The offense is going to be just fine. I think being forced, maybe a little bit too strong of a word, but kind of nudged in that defensive area because you couldn't get the offensive thing done, maybe exactly what they need. That the most practical, obvious pick is the best pick, as opposed to reaching for that player who may have been super exciting. And look, we'll see what happens with the Raiders and Bowers. I don't know if Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell are the guy to unlock what Brock Bowers does. It seemed like a weird pick to me. Like, why are you already can't get the ball to Devontae Adams. You want to have 2 guys you can't get the ball to? I don't get it, but that's why the Raiders are the Raiders, and that's why the Rams are the Rams.
Yeah, if I'm Bowers, I'm thinking, man, I could have been with Sean McVay and Matthew Stafford in LA, and I'm with this dysfunctional Raiders franchise. Yeah. So, yeah, I think for your Bowers, you would have loved to see that trade go down. But look, they filled a need, and they didn't have to give up any future picks. That's the way I look at it. And look, you need these first-round picks to be on your roster. Last season, if you look at the first-round picks on this team, you had Aaron Donald, Matthew Stafford, and then later you had Carson Wentz. That was it. Those are the only first-round picks on this roster. So I think crazy. Jared Verse, higher floor, lesser bust rate. But kind of my big takeaway was it's also you feel the impact of Aaron Donald retiring. If he's still on that roster, maybe you're more aggressive. Maybe you're saying, you know what, 80's on this team. We're going to have a low pick in the future years. We got to go for it. Whatever it takes to get Bowers, we're getting him. So it's kind of one of those things where you're still feeling those effects of Aaron Donald because you had to prioritize defense because he's gone. You just don't know what you're going to get from that side of the ball.
Yeah, they got, put in a position where the best pick was right there in front of them. Verse was the one. Verse fits the need that they have. It's that rare moment where best available and need kind of intersect at the right moment. They got their guy. They got Fisk after that, moved up to get Fisk. So maybe the Bowers thing might have been the thing that gets us jumping up and down, on draft day. It might have been the thing that sells jerseys. It might have been the things that you're going to see a bunch of highlight plays on NFL Network or SportsCenter or whatever. But this may have been the more practical, better pick to make them a better football team.
100% about to throw out the coldest take ever, too. Jared Verse is going to do more for the Rams this year than Jalen Hoods-Scafino did for the Los Angeles Lakers, right? He ain't going to be on the practice squad doing nothing.
He'll play, you mean?
Exactly. Yeah. He's going to play. He's going to have an impact. He's going to be big. Jared Verse is going to be that man for the Rams this season. But coming up next, the Rams signed 16 undrafted free agents. We're going to run down the list, talk about some guys that could make this team and have an impact. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
It's a winner-take-all time in the NBA and NHL. And FanDuel, they're giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. If you love NBA basketball, if you love playoff hockey, and by the way, who doesn't love playoff hockey? It's even better with FanDuel because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. You heard me right, $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 you can bet on point spreads, on money lines, on player props. Really, you can put it wherever you want. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. It takes it to a whole nother level. We like the games, but when you got a little something else going on in there, it's a whole lot better. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Again, go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count.
And we are off and running here on Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, a special shout out to those everyday listeners out there watching and listening to every single episode. Really helps us out, really helps out the show. We really appreciate it. You can join that Everyday Listeners Club too. You just join, you subscribe, you watch every single show, and you won't miss a thing about your Los Angeles Rams. Now, Travis, here in our second segment, got to talk about some UDFAs. The Rams, they signed 16 undrafted free agents. If you look at the group as a whole, you got 10 defensive players, you got 6 offensive players, you got 5 defensive backs, you got 3 D linemen, and you got 2 linebackers. Now, first one I want to talk about is the D end out of Oklahoma State. And we're talking about Anthony Goodlow. And this is someone who was going to sneak up and possibly get drafted. He's a physical player. If you look at his size, 6'4", 283, big dude. And look, yes, are all these guys going to have impact? No. The goal right now for them is to try to make that practice squad. But hey, 40% of every roster, you got the UDFAs on this team right now. There's guys having impacts like Alaric Jackson, those types. So Anthony Goodlow, I think of all the guys that I'm looking at on this list, I think has the highest chance of making this team and have an impact down the line.
This is where you just flood the zone, right? Where you need a cornerback. Let's go sign a bunch of guys, and maybe we find one. Maybe we find one guy that makes the practice squad. Maybe you find one guy that makes the game day roster. This is more of a shotgun approach as opposed to a rifle. Let's get a bunch of guys in here that play this position, and maybe we'll strike gold with a player or two along the way. They're undrafted for a reason, right? There's probably something in the metrics that doesn't quite work out. They're not tall enough. They're not fast enough. They're not this, that, or the other thing. Doesn't mean they can't play. It means that there was something that was preventing somebody from spending a draft pick on them. That's it. Now, there's also the whole thing where you can go in there and it's like, yeah, none of these guys are going to make the team. Somebody will. It feels like every year there's a guy that's like, oh, okay, that guy kind of popped a little bit. And this isn't somebody that you throw in there on opening day, but halfway through the season, guys go down. You got to take a chance. You put someone in there and you realize it works maybe a little bit better than you might have anticipated. I'm not going to sit here, D-Mac, and tell you that I like this guy more than that guy. What I'm telling you is bring in a bunch of these guys, let them fight like crazy in training camp, and maybe 1 or 2 guys will have their hands raised and say, look, you can't leave me off of your roster. That's what I think, not just the Rams, but every team in the league is just trying to find 1 or 2 guys out of the 10, 12, 15, 20 UDFAs that they add.
Yeah, you're not looking for stars. You're not looking for superstars. You're not looking for Pro Bowlers. Looking for role players, right? And I think with Goodlow, he's someone that he can do the 3-tech. He's got his hand on the dirt. He can play DN. He can be a run stuffer. I just like his length, and I think that you get quality guys for measurables, and then that's where you take advantage of the Rams' ability to develop players, and that really is what it's all about. I mean, college is very different than everything they have access to in the NFL. And I think that's what the Rams do so well. And that's why they're able to get some depth. But I mean, you got Thule from Washington. You might know him. He went to De La Salle. Of course, De La Salle, the record, 151 games. How do you win 151 games from 1992 to 2004?
That's a lot of football games in high school. So I had a bunch of high school or buddies of mine in college that went to De La Salle for high school that were a part of that 150 some odd game winning streak. And they don't know how they did it. Other than they just had a bunch of really good players and some very good coaches. They ripped it off. But yeah, I mean, you're going to find guys in this pool that make your team. Maybe. Right. And that's what it is. You just need to keep bringing guys in. What did you say? 2 first-round picks on the Rams last year, 3 when they added Carson Wentz later on. That means that there's a whole bunch of roster spots that are not names that we know on draft day, that are not names that, even super draft Nicky type of people are like, oh, that's the one. They come from everywhere. And the more you bring in, the more chances you have to find them, especially at a position in need.
And a lot of times it has to do with the fact that certain players at certain positions aren't working out. I mean, you have Alec Jackson there starting at left tackle. Why is he left tackle? Because Joe Noteboom pretty much was a bust when you look at where he was at in the 3rd round. Yes, he can provide some depth, but you look at the contract, he's just not the player that they hoped he would be. Alec Jackson's given up 39 pressures in 15 games. So, yeah, he is solid, but rarely do you see guys. I mean, you're not going to get the London Fletchers or the Kurt Warners or guys like that. It doesn't come very often. But you look at this team, you got Christian Roseboom, you got Michael Hoyt, you got Jonah Williams and A.J. Jackson. So the proof is there that guys can at least fill a role.
Well, so 2 names that you just mentioned. Let's do Alec Jackson and Michael Hoyt. Those are starters on your team.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that is a grand slam if you can find a starter on your team that you didn't have to spend a draft pick on, much less a starter left. Look, is Alec Jackson going to make all pro? No. Was he the starting left tackle on a playoff team? Yeah, he was. And did he do a good enough job? Yeah, I think he did. Michael Hoyt, I know you and I both really like Michael Hoyt. I think that they played him out of position for a good chunk of the season last year. But again, this is an NFL starting player that you got as an undrafted free agent, and that's what you're hoping to do. A couple of guys that put him in your program for a period of time, develop them, and if an opportunity arises, see if they can raise to the occasion, and those 2 guys definitely did.
100%. A couple other guys to keep your eyes on. Josh Wallace, defensive back out of Michigan. We know the success they had with a national championship. We talk about that winning pedigree and how important that is at the NFL level. But Omar Speights out of LSU, linebacker. They were thin at that position. And you look at him, LSU, top program in the SEC. They've always flooded the NFL with talent and athleticism and great features to teams. And I think with Speights, he can beat out Roseboom, right? He can beat out Reeder. So I think that's the one guy, I say him and Goodlow, that are going to make this 53-man roster. So I'm calling my shot right now. I think Speights makes this team. Give
me an LSU guy all day long. The LSU, Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State, I'll take them all. There's a reason they never lose. It's because they have really, really good players. You can't go wrong as far as I'm concerned. If you're going to undrafted free agent guys, I know you maybe want to take some shots here or there, but if you got a guy that you think can play and he was able to play at a place like LSU, bring him on in.
It's funny how that works, right? It's like, wow, so we got Omar Speights from LSU. I like that guy. And then you got Elias Neal from Marshall. I don't know. I mean,
Right. Look, give me the LSU guy. It doesn't mean he's going to be better, but I like my chances more.
This is no disrespect to Chad Pennington, Byron Leftwich, and Randy Moss, by the way. But, hey, he was there after Florida State, Notre Dame, all that good stuff. Well, Notre Dame was a dream school, never happened. But we're not going to do the history of Randy Moss, even though I think he did kill it at Tom Brady's roast yesterday. But the most important thing here is I just trust the Rams' eye for talent. I trust their eye for finding guys that they know are a little raw that they can mold. So I'm excited to see which one of these names emerges. And I think they definitely have some strong candidates and guys that can do just that. But coming up in our next segment, old friend Odell Beckham Jr. signs with the Miami Dolphins. Of course, he reunites with Jalen Ramsey. We're going to talk about how that could impact the Rams. That's coming up next here on Locked On Rams.
All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about that, but there's just way too much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with your friends for time tournaments. You guys work together to build up each other's boards, and the more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there is so much that you can get, like unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings and heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there are always timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it for free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Travis, we're going to talk about old friend Odell Beckham Jr., of course, a key addition to that Rams team that won Super Bowl 56 back in 2021. Of course, he unfortunately tore his ACL there in the Super Bowl, but that was after a big touchdown catch. He was really just getting going that game. Could have won Super Bowl MVP for all we know. We ended up signing a one-year deal with the Miami Dolphins for $8.25 million. This is according to Ian Rappaport. Now, how does this impact the Los Angeles Rams? Well, first thing I want to say about this is the Rams are 2-12 all time against the Miami Dolphins. They haven't beat them since 2001. Wow. And they host the Dolphins this year at SoFi Stadium. So that's one of the best offenses in the league. You got McDaniels, one of the offensive geniuses. So, hey, you add another weapon like OBJ, could impact this team, especially when the defensive side of the ball, there's a lot of question marks.
Yeah, look, when I think of OBJ, I think of maybe one of the great Rams stories that we've seen in the Sean McVay era, because, OBJ in New York was a primetime guy. We all remember the catch on Monday Night Football, and he was a star in the league. He goes to Cleveland, and it just doesn't work at all. And the narrative turned into, hey, is this guy even any good? And no one was really quite sure what the answer was. Was it, had he lost it, or the Browns, and they just couldn't get out of their own way? He comes to LA, and it's like, oh, yeah, he's pretty good. He's really good. Like you said, he was on his way to maybe an MVP caliber performance in the Super Bowl before he got injured. Then he misses a whole season rehabbing. He goes to Baltimore, and you tell me, D-Mac, do you remember a single play that Odell Beckham Jr. made in Baltimore? I don't. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that to be disrespectful to him. I'm saying the Rams may have grabbed the last part of him being a really dynamic, electric player, and were able to, kind of maximize that in a short period of time. And then maybe they got a little, I don't want to say lucky because you don't want anybody to get hurt, but that all of a sudden he was a free agent, that he was in flux, and now he's in Miami. Good luck with Tua there, OBJ. I don't think that's quite Matthew Stafford that you have throwing you the ball right there. I just think it's a really good example of what the Rams can do when they take a player that they've identified as a good player that maybe is a little undervalued somewhere else, and getting the very best out of him, maybe for the last time.
Yeah, I think we talked about a couple of times on this show about the idea of possibly bringing OBJ back to the Rams. And yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not like he's that guy anymore. I mean, 14 games last season, 565 yards, 3 touchdowns, but he did have a positive impact, though. He did help them win games in Baltimore. I think for him in Miami, he doesn't have to be that number one. He doesn't have to be that number two, like we saw when he was with the New York Giants. And I think that really is the best role for him at this stage of his career. So, yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, though, having him on the Rams, it just felt cool, right? It put them over the top. Sometimes you add a player that puts you over the top. He was 100% that guy. You could easily make the case, you could say it with a straight face, that without Odell Beckham Jr., they don't win that Super Bowl, because 52 yards, the touchdown, and really he was ready to go, right? He provide that spark. He wasn't afraid of that moment when, maybe they were out of sync, maybe they weren't, it wasn't going right at times. So he was so huge in that Super Bowl. Now,
I think it reminds me a little bit of the Baker Mayfield thing too, where the Rams may have been able to stake their claim on, hey, listen, you're a good player in this league, but it's not working out for you where you might be. Why don't you come over here and we can polish this up a little bit? And Mayfield turned a 5-game kind of, hey, what the hell do we have to lose opportunity into a long-term deal in Tampa where he's a starting quarterback all over again. That get the best version out of this guy. It's good for the Rams. It's good for the players. And then they can go out into the world. The Rams can decide whether they want to stay in that business or not. But being the destination for players like, hey, look, I got a chance to kind of rebuild my brand, and I can do it in LA with Sean McVay. That's a great little niche to have as an organization.
It truly is. But one thing I really want to ask you about for this segment is he famously does not like to drink water, right? I mean, he's had multiple games where he has the IV in. He says that he doesn't like water, that it makes him feel slushy inside. It makes him feel uncomfortable. And I get it. Yes, I get it. Dolphins, they live in water, so they don't drink it, But, I mean, what do you make of this?
I make that is not good, right? I make that is one of those, yeah, you know what? I get it. You don't like it, do it anyway. Like that.
Yeah,
that's one
exactly.
of those. Maybe it's not your first choice of beverage. Do it anyway. It's kind of important to like living. It's kind of important to performance. It's kind of important to making sure that you don't cramp out anything. That just get over it, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, look, in Miami, they say their 12th man is the sun, so it's not going to work there. Got to drink up. You got to hydrate, okay? I'm just saying, OBJ, look.
Throw a little electrolyte packet in there. You'll be fine. Just knock yourself out.
Yeah, exactly, right? But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMac_LA. You can follow the People's Champ at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.